The following is intended only for mature audiences. Always consult legal and medical professionals when needed. Viewer discretion is advised. Good evening and welcome back to another edition of Terra Turas. As I go around and I make sure that everything is trying to work in a proper order this evening. This evening in our show here in the upper left-hand corner is Tammy Manzo. I don't know why I want to keep saying that. I apologize.
Well, it's okay. That's the Italian pronunciation.
And then in the bottom left we have Mr. Malcolm Spears.
Hello.
And then joining us, this is her first show joining us, and she's going to be a cast regular, if you will. The bottom right-hand corner, Lisa Fry. How are you doing, everybody?
Great. Good.
Awesome. This evening, I know that we have finally kind of bumped into something that is a problematic issue for a lot of people. It's getting past hurdles of things that we have done in the past, whether we feel obligations to something in the past, whether we are attached metaphysically to something in the past, breaking old habits. All of these things are things that would stop us from moving forward or continuing on our journey or creating a better life or many of all of the above. Well, this evening we have a very wide, mixed arrangement of how we're going to look at doing these things, because none of the four of us would do them the same way. It's true, because here we have Tammy, who is going to be able to talk to us about how to go about it, doing it from an astrological standpoint. Malcolm has done a lot of work with a lot of people in previous and has some very serious, experienced ways to go about doing this. You get over to Lisa, because she's that late bloomer that came into her gifts and abilities later in life. Her outlook on things is massively different than any of the three of us. And then there's just me. I'm the old stooge, the stick in the mud, with just some very thoughtful ways that I'm doing things. So I'm going to start, Tammy, with you, if you would. Are there points in time that we should be looking at things in a month or in a 45-day aspect from an astrological standpoint? Are there points in time that we should be more aware or begin things more in that fashion, or just randomly wing it and go about it on a weekly basis?
You're talking about clearing things specifically? Like
yes, to clear past items, clear events, things of that nature.
Well, everything in astrology is energy. And there are certain times of the month that we're going to notice that things seem to be rising, things get bigger and bigger to the point where we're going to feel like we need to let them go. And that corresponds with the moon. The moon is our subconscious and it's our emotions. So a lot of people feel like, around the full moon that things are being, amplified, magnified, and that's time to let things go. And, if you let things go that long, that's when they will come out. Usually, it's like a pressure cooker. You should have the little, the lid on with a little escape valve always going. So as you feel these things come up, don't wait for the full moon to pull that out of you. You should do it as soon as you notice that there's something on your mind that you need to say to someone. There's something that you need to stop doing. Some friend asks you for help and you want to stop doing it and you don't know how to say no. And if you wait until that full moon comes, it might be out of your hands. There might be a big eruption. So you should go ahead and do it as soon as you're cognizant of knowing, hey, I don't want to do this anymore, So, but that being said, yeah, sometimes with the full moon energies, it's easier to allow ourselves to give ourselves that permission. Sometimes we need to get to that point where, all right, you know, we really can't do anything else. And that usually corresponds with the moon. And it's every, 28 days the moon starts a new cycle. So every month we have a new chance to clear some things out.
And that to me is rather important, because I know that people that are beginning to pay attention, or people that are doing things, or they're right in the middle of everything, you always will hear them first say, oh, well, and they hear the words Mercury retrograde. So they're starting to think of something in an astrological event that coincides with things that they have happening in their life. And it's, to me, a little bit more clear if we, basically you, if you were to be able to say to people, look, here are the points in time, like you mentioned, during a full moon, this is the best time to work on that. But at the same time, being cognizant to say, if you're thinking about it, do it. That way you don't forget, or you don't lose the energetic of it, or things like that. Malcolm, I'm going to turn over and ask you a question, because this, in your time of working with people, and I know, and I'm going to hit everybody with this very same thing, how have you been able to help people find something that is tying them, holding them back, or stopping them from progressing? Whether it's through a sense of obligation or something.
I work a lot with I call it the result system, and with either finger kinesiology or a pendulum, we start looking at what is going on and what pattern is being drawn out. So as we can start tying it back to beliefs often earlier in life. Mm-hmm. It can go right back into childhood. And so we find out the body will give up the information through kinesiology. So as we start touching on different aspects, like it'll go to specific ages, and I'll start asking, okay, well, what happened at 14? And we'll talk about it a bit, and we'll start, it'll start to surface. And it creates a belief system, all of these events tied together. So once we identify the belief system, then we can see, okay, this is what's really going on. This is what's affecting you. Now let's clear it. And there's a whole series of different exercises, meditations, neck and eye movements. There's a whole slew of things to be able to release them, and you can release it on the spot. And if people can have quite a sense of freedom from that.
I imagine that if they can find a trigger point, or find to something that gives them an automatic feeling of, I've taken this stance and I have taken this action, and they can feel something has happened, that's got to be a form of validation for them, and then to be able to carry on even further with it. Lisa, I'm going to ask you an oddity. Here it comes.
Oh, no.
And number one, no, I'm seriously glad you're able to join us this evening, especially on short notice. Heather was going to be on. She had a couple things pop up. And at the very last minute, folks, I turned around and I asked Lisa, I said, hey, I know you're not really scheduled, but can I use you? Can you? And she said, absolutely, and here she is. Even though she was teaching a class right before this. So it's like she doesn't have any downtime. Because you, and I would fill people in, you, by your own admission, are a late bloomer. Your gifts and abilities didn't hit you until what age?
38.
And how old are you now?
48.
Okay, so you've had a decade that has been running through all of this.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
So, as a late bloomer to all of this, I don't want to say that you represent a certain sect of people or a certain swath of people.
Oh, really, I do, yeah.
Yeah, but you truly do kind of represent people that are just now really becoming awake, and maybe a lot of them, their butt is clenching, going, what am I doing? What's going on here?
Right.
How do you help people identify with something that is holding them back?
I kind of do it the exact same way I started out with it, because it was a shock for me. I expanded my knowledge, and I stepped into energy healing, and then I went into shamanism. So in working with my guides, I can actually work with other people and go into their energy field and pinpoint the soul fragments that have been broken off because of trauma that is causing blockages in their energy field, and then help them regain that into their soul. It's really it's very deep healing. It is as old as man, and I have found that to be the most beneficial. That and working with a lot of auric and chakra type of disciplines that help me see where they have issues to start with. So it's just a conglomeration of things, basically.
And this is what I had mentioned, because all four of us have a radically different way that we might come about looking at this. You know, whether it's astrologically, whether it is more in a, Malcolm, I'm not going to say scientific, but it is a pinpointed kind of thing that you're doing. And then you've got Lisa, who uses more of the metaphysical side of life to listen and hone in on a particular thing. And then there's me, that I sit and I listen to what the person that I'm working with. I'll turn around and I'll listen, and the conversation becomes guided not only by me but by spirit. And I listen to spirit, I listen to the person, and I'm given the questions that kind of hone right around into, and all of a sudden we're face to face with what problem is, what is bothering them, something that is going on, you know, because I'm a non-confrontational person. So for me, it's easier just to kind of walk around the backside of things and go, oh, hey, tap them on the shoulder and say, let's talk about this. And then all of a sudden we're right in the middle of the conversation of what we need to have. And so it's all four of us have a different method. Now I'm going to go round robin here and ask, Tammy, in the things that you do and how you work with people, do you find that there is a more prevalent area that people become stuck in?
Well, I've looked at a lot of people's charts. I like to look at their charts before I do a healing session with them. And if we can get their chart, we can really pinpoint, you know, a lot of these are past life things coming forward, you know, patterns of habits and beliefs and challenges coming forward. You can see certain things in the chart. And you have to look at the chart as a whole, but you can see, you know, where the wound is, where the Chiron is, the house and the sign. You could hone in on a lot of things from that. Uranus will show like the trauma, like where Lisa would see, you know, parts of things being, you know, shredded off. That would be the house that Uranus is in. That would show that trauma. Saturn would show past life karma and what you need to do to get back on the path. And you've got to look at everything in the house and the sign that you could really pinpoint. And a lot of times when I'm even just talking to people, looking at their chart, I spend a lot of time talking about the wounds and the karma. And a lot of times it'll just come out spontaneously where they'll start crying, or I'll start crying for them, and I'm like, "Ooh, what's this thing here?" And it'll come out. And I found many wounds where people are disconnected from source. That's the ninth house. I found a lot of wounds for people with self-worth. That would be second house. A lot of wounds in the family line, fourth house. There are, you know, it's like they're archetypes. You know what I mean? There's millions of people in the world, and we're all different and on different journeys. But there's, you know, when we boil it down to it, there's certain, you know, we're all sharing the same kind of wound. We all have the same kind of, you know what I mean?
Right.
So,
and it's interesting from your standpoint, looking at everything energetically from an astrological standpoint, let alone as a Reiki healer, as you're seeing it from the energetic side, to where, don't take offense at this, but it's like you can print somebody's chart and turn around and hold it up and say, here, 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 here. Do you understand? Not that it's ever that short, you know, but you can look at it almost empirically, instead of from a complete emotional aspect.
Actually, when I look at that, I'm looking at their soul, and it's almost the opposite. And sometimes that's why I will cry. Literally, just had a reading over the weekend, and I was in tears as well because I saw what was going on, and I could feel that that soul. It's the sum total of what the soul has experienced over all their past lives, and you could see it in the chart.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So it's quite different than, at least the way I do it, it's different than other people would. And there's no wrong way. Every astrologer is different. Yeah, look at things differently. But soul healing has always been my part that I do. You know what I mean? That I connect with. So.
I know that when you did a reading for my mother-in-law, she came out, and now she's in her 70s, and has been around metaphysics for decades, and has gone to spirit circles, many different things, teachings, learnings, Lilydale, Chesterfield, you name it. But when she came walking out of my office after talking to you, her eyes are like this, and she's got this big smile painted on her face. And I'm like, oh, okay. Because, again, you have that way about you that you explain things in terms that people relate. We
kind of healed something up for her that she never got before.
Yep.
And that's what I do with every single person. If you're willing to show up and have that reading, you're going to get you're going to get a healing out of it. You're going to get an I'm not crazy after all. You walk away. Oh, this is real. Oh my gosh, and it's going to solve problems. I've had people, there's wounds in their money houses or other people's money. And these people, I'm asking them, hey, what's going on with your finances in this lifetime? And they've been through bankruptcy. They've been through all kinds of other things. And this is coming from their past life stuff. And we're able to turn that around and shift that like immediately. They could go forward from that reading and go, oh, okay, I don't have to carry this out and fear about lack of money any longer. And when I talk to them about it, they're ready to let it go.
And it's interesting how that happens in that aspect as well. Malcolm, you have worked with people on sometimes a much wider scale because you're well traveled, because you have been doing this for quite some time. In your working, in your teaching, in your reading, and for people that don't know, Malcolm lives up in Canada. He's not even here in the U.S. So I don't want to say foreigner because we're the foreigner to him, but he's the foreigner here. But have you found a particular overriding? It's like if you work with 100 people, have you found that there is a common thread or a more pervasive issue that happens to run across many people?
I'd say the most prevalent is self-worth. Stories happen to people, and they take it on themselves. They take it on their shoulders. They take it on their heart, and a lot of this stuff challenges them and their beliefs about themselves, about it limits who they can be, and can really cut an awful lot of their potential, an awful lot of their joy. That's probably the biggest one that I've found.
How did you help them understand a better point of view for self-worth? Because that's got sitting here thinking about it, I have a hard time even trying to think about it or deal with it. I would rather deal with somebody else's issue and help get them moving rather than look in the mirror and help that guy. So how did you help people get over that hurdle?
We find out what through interview, through what I've already talked about. We go back and we trace out the line. Occasionally it goes back into past lives. Once in a blue moon, it's stuff picked up in the womb. Like when they know, that dad always wanted a boy, stuff as simple as that. One girl I worked with, she actually made it her business to look bad. Apparently, she found this out for her mom when she was born. Dad took one look at her and said, "She's ugly." And she picked this up and she manifested it. I mean, she would just always look terrible. And after she had done quite a bit of work on herself, I had met her about 2 weeks after a class. We did a 2-week intensive class, and I met her. I met her that 2 weeks later, and I didn't recognize her. That's how much she transformed.
Wow.
You know, her whole presence has changed completely, and she was shining.
Wow.
That's just unreal. I've seen that happen from time to time with people, to where they walk in one way and they walk out very different. And I'll put it to you mildly, to the people that are listening or watching. I need you to think of it in a similar venue, whether people have made fun of it or if they have experienced it, if they have a come to Jesus meeting, or if they have overnight or walked into a church and they found their particular theology, they found God. That is a life-changing event, and these things do happen. And it's not just stuck to the church. It happens in everyday life, whether it is something like what Malcolm is telling you, or whether it is near-death experience, or something has happened. And again, Lisa, you're almost a poster child of that, because here you are at 38 years old, and all of this happens, and you're like, oh, shit, now what? You know?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're wide open, and you don't know what to do. In your working with people, have you found a common thread or something that is prevalent in people?
I would have to say I'm right up there with the self-confidence and past trauma, that type of thing. Once you can identify, I work a lot with the Akashic Records, so I definitely go into what their guides want them to know about what their patterns are, how they've carried over into this particular life, and how to move forward, or maybe either deepen themselves into positive patterns or release negative patterns and move forward. And once we start to do that, they start to see things differently. And I really like working with people on noticing their divinity in themselves. And once they can start to see that, I think they change. They start to shift a little bit. Once they see, they get confirmation and validation, and people start to shift their perceptions, things change. And they just start moving forward. You know, but there's a lot of self-doubt. We are, when we first are starting, or in the people that start younger, you know, they have this path in front of them, and it's easy. Not easy. Oh, it's never easy. But it's easier because maybe, hopefully, if their family's open to it, it sounds like your family was open to it, you know, they paved the way for you. Unless you have the naysayers in the family that step away from that and give you roadblocks, you know. At 38 years old, I had several roadblocks. You know, and Malcolm talks about the muscle testing and the kinesiology, and I did EFT. I had to actually get in there and figure out what these issues were, and EFT was a miracle for me. You know, so there's a billion different ways, because each person is so singular on how to move forward. And once they figure it out, boy, it's nice to see that light bulb go on.
And it is. I'm curious because I look at things. Again, I'm that logical guy. You know, everything somewhere has to make a logical sense to me. As I was growing up, I didn't have the open family. Thank God my grandfather would tell me stories and help me understand what was going on. But I didn't have the open family that spoke about hearing things, seeing things, dealing with things, metaphysical nothing. You know. But here again, I was born in 1968. By the time I was 5, it was 1973. You can imagine, you went to church, you don't talk about this, you don't do that. But in the course of working with people over the last, 12 years, I've connected with people literally around the world. But what I have found, and I would tell you, yes, I see the self-worth aspect of what it is, but because I deal with a lot of people on the phone, what I often hear is trust issue. That they don't trust what is happening. or they don't trust what they're feeling. And unfortunately, it runs right into, I don't trust the person in the mirror. I don't trust anything of what's going on. Let me have my 40-hour-a-week job and keep my head down, pay my bills. And those are the people that become frustrated. And they have to take multiple vacations away from their life because they don't like their life. They have to run away from it in order to be able to relax. And that's a hard item to kind of swallow. People go, I can't wait to go on vacation. Most of them only want to go on vacation to run away from what is. And they dread coming back. And they don't like it. And I say, okay, what is it that you don't trust? And if they're talking about the metaphysical side, they would say, I don't trust what I see is real. I don't trust what I feel is happening. It's how many people, if you had watched anything in the last decade about The Secret, both the book, the movie, we've all seen it. How many people would jump right into that and think about it really hard, and they didn't see the results and must not work. They don't trust. They literally didn't trust anything, because they didn't have this immediate result or return. And then that trust issue rolls right into relationships, rolls right into their finances. To me, it's a different kind of thing. We're going to take a few minutes here and take just a break because we're halfway through our show already. Wow. Time goes by so quick around here. When we come back, I'm going to try to take a few, 2 or 3 situations. And I'm going to ask everybody, not the same thing. I'm going to ask everybody a different thing of a situation. How would you handle what's going on, and how would you advise or help somebody? So, everybody, if you would, hang tight. We'll be back here in just a few minutes. Coming back from our short interlude, thank you everybody that is joining both on YouTube in the chat room there and as well as on Facebook, in our chat room here on Facebook. Next week or the week after, I'm going to try to also add Periscope, which is for Twitter. But I'm trying to make sure that everything that I've got moving in different parts and all the software is working well before I add yet another layer of material to it. So thank you everybody for joining in. And this evening, again, we're talking about breaking ties of the past so that we can move forward in life. The first one that I'm going to ask, these are things that I know that hit everybody in an everyday kind of life. So it's an oddity. But Tammy, when you are talking with people and they bring up that they would like to change their career, but they either feel obligated or they don't think that they're worth it or something, how do you go about not only finding kind of what kept them stuck in that, but also as well as moving forward? How do you go about doing that from an astrological side, or how you help people?
Well, I'm looking at their chart, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of times you can see definitely where the gifts, well, you can always see where the gifts and talents are, but sometimes you will see where they will line up to be conducive to a certain career. And a lot of times I'll start right out and say, oh my gosh, are you in this field? You know, and they'll either say yes or no. And the yes is like, oh yeah, I'm there and I love it. And the no is like, no, but I want to be. So you can see already there's, you know, gifts and talents that come forward from past lives, things that people have learned, but the soul wants to express. And they know they want to be there, but maybe there's a past life program running where, you know, the family wanted them to be a doctor or a priest instead, you know, and they felt obligated. So we would talk about just releasing that. And a lot of times, you know, we create the mind program. We can uncreate it. So all they have to do is make a clearing statement. You know, I uncreate my obligation to fill in the blank. And then you would create an opposite, you know. I am free to have any career that I want. I am free to become a doctor, a lawyer, or whatever it is that they want to be. Mm-hmm. And it shifts. I mean, you can feel the energy shift. When people say that, and sometimes I'll open their Akashic records for them, right, Lisa? You just open up the records. Yeah. Everything is held in the records. And really, it's more powerful when the records are open. They can uncreate that because they have created it, you know. And it's instantaneous, like Malcolm said. It's instantaneous when you shift that. It's shifted. They created it. They can uncreate it as well and create something new. And the big thing is getting somebody to believe that they can do that. Wow, I can do that in 1 minute. I can shift all this in one, you know what I mean, in one session. Wow, okay. And it comes to the believing and the trusting. Like Michael, you talked before about the trusting. Do they trust that this can happen? And if they have all those things lined up, yes, they believe and they trust, they just don't know how to do it, then bam, you're in. But if they don't trust and they don't believe, that's a whole other, you know, that's a horse of a different color, you know, if they don't trust and believe.
Now, I'm going to stop you for a second because in the YouTube chat is a lady by the name of Leslie Joy, and she mentions breaking soul contracts. And I want to touch base on that just for a moment, because how difficult or how easy is that, number one, and number two, because you're talking about the Akashic Records, how do you go about forging a new contract, or do you become like a free agent and you just go like hell wherever you want to go?
Well, the energies that are going on in the universe right now are releasing timelines, releasing those contracts, and it's kind of happening naturally. The South Node is conjunct to Pluto and Saturn, and it's a time when we're clearing stuff out. We're clearing out big past life habits, programs, beliefs, contracts. You know, all you have to do is want to do it. Just make the statement. I release this now. I release all timelines. I release all commitment to fill in the blank. or whatever, you know what I mean? This person, this thing, whatever it is, and you're done. We are the master creators. I mean, once we say it one time, it's done. You don't have to keep, doing it or praying or hoping and asking God 100 million times, oh my God, let me release this. We say it one time, it's done. We're the master creators. We've created everything in our life. You can uncreate it as well. And then you just create something new, but you got to make sure you put something in that takes the place of that, because if you just clear something out, there's like a black hole there, and the universe will track something in. Something will go back in there that you don't maybe want. So you want to create the opposite. Release that soul contract with that person and make the statement, I am now free to create whatever I want.
That makes sense to me on a logical level. and it rings true with a lot of things that I work with people. Malcolm, since we are speaking more about the relationship sides of life, when you run into people, and we know that relationships are one of the top things that are spoken about, or that we help people traverse through, how do you help that person that is looking to either move away from a relationship or to produce the things they need for a clean divorce, things like that? How would you help them do that?
Well, with what I do and also is help people zoom out to see what the patterns are, and I'm imagining astrology is the ultimate zoom out, and so that you can see really what's going on with you and what your needs are, and then bring them back in and look at the practical and to see what's going on. For the previous question, Tammy was talking about making a declarative statement. The statement, I consciously decide, ... okay, is incredibly powerful. Mm-hmm. And if you do that with enough presence, you can shift on the spot, just bang, like that. So people have to be, what I find with people coming in with relationship questions like that are usually really unclear about what's going on in their relationship. So the thing for me is to make them really understand, okay, are you done with this? Did you learn what you had to learn? Did you have any karmic debt? Any of these things. It's like if you're going to separate, do it clean. And, have it so that it's as a wake for everybody. Because if you do it consciously, it can really cut down the level of emotional pain. And this is what really people, I think, really need to understand is really what's really going on. And let's have a look at it and see if we can balance things out for you.
In looking at that from that aspect, a lady here in the Facebook chat room, Jennifer Vaughn, had asked, will karmic cords being cut have an impact, and would it be a positive or a negative? So when you are dealing with people, and I've heard Pat talk about it, and I've witnessed it, but they say cut the cords of that particular event, or will someone feel that, and does it have side effects?
That's a really good question. Yes, people will feel it, but you can also there is a way to go about it. I release and forgive, or if I in any lifetime took a vow or promise. I mean, there's all kinds of ways to start that. But yeah, that's why I'm talking about doing like a clean awake break, so that you're not dragging tons of material behind you into your next relationship. So to be free from the old one first, completely, as best as you can. And so you're not dragging ancient history with you into the new relationship and setting up something further down the road.
And I run into that a lot in dealing with people, and again across generational all kinds of things, to where they will say, "Well, I want this to happen, but," and it becomes very apparent you're judging your new relationship with definitions that you're bringing from your old one. And A, that's not fair to the new person, and B, that's going to create hell for you. It's like you said, you've got to go in with a very fresh outlook all over again. And as belief, as you very well know, it's a belief that you can actually make that happen. Lisa?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Malcolm.
Sorry. It's our deeply held beliefs are so incredibly powerful. We end up creating our reality from this. And that's why it's so potent to make changes at that level, because you can transform very quickly and, really have those aha awakening moments where you just realize your whole pattern, you've let it go, and now you're ready for whatever's next. Very powerful stuff.
And there is one more aspect and I would like to remind people, it has been said twice already, when you go to make a change, you need to declare, I am, I allow, I will, without any negative connotation to it. Because those first steps of creating are going to basically form the basis of what you're trying to do. And if you become wishy-washy, if you sit there and say, well, I think that I would like to have this, and you're asking for a Cadillac, you're going to be lucky if you get a go-kart with a front fender. All right? You have to be clear, you have to believe it, and you have to be able to envision that. Which brings me, Lisa, to something, again, drawing on being... You lived 38 years, and then all of a sudden you got hit with the frying pan, the metaphysical side of life, going, hey, check this out. How do you help people that are in or have a similar... Let's look at it from the point of they had a previous dysfunction, and now they're in a metaphysical kind of way.
Release. There's so much self-judgment. We all live in these perceptions of what we should be and what we should do and all of that. And when you're, especially in my situation where you live a good portion of your life already and you're in that, you're steeped in that. Release is so huge. And the other thing I really talk to my students about is you can aim yourself. That The Secret, I'm a huge fan of The Secret. We watch it at least once a month because I'm kind of a flake and I forget things. So we watch it a lot. And but living in the joy of it, I try to express, hey, you can want all you want, you can put all those thoughts out there, but unless you're going to put your emotion with it, emotion is so huge. If they're gonna say, I would like a new house, but I've got all these other things, and they cut themselves off the knees because they threw the but in there instead of the emotion of that great turn of the key, the tumblers in that lock, that really awesome feeling. And I really try to impress upon them, we are the manifestors of our own destiny, everything. And I have some wonderful examples when I first start working with people, of things that just fall into your lap if you can get past perceptions of what you think you can do. Because what we can do is infinite. It really is. It is only set by our own limitations. So I think getting that thought process across to people it's so important. And once they get there, they start having those aha moments where they go, oh, okay, and the checks start coming in the mail. Any kind of little bit of validation that they can get, that they have that ability to change everything, helps them along their way. And I love seeing that. I just do. My first thing I always tell them is think of checks coming in the mail. Watch The Secret. Follow what they say. Ask for checks in the mail. And then I get these messages like, seriously, I got a check in the mail for da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, well, go to dinner, Go have fun and bring some joy in your life. And I really feel that is a huge key. Releasing the fear and anxiety of what their box should be, what they think they should be, and what an intuitive or a healer, we have preconceived notions of what we should, maybe look like or sound like. And that's some of the things, with teaching people that you are your own. Set your energy out there and live in that joy, and bam, there it goes. Falls into place.
And I'm much in the same way when I work with people. I try to tell them first, after we kind of have a conversation, we narrow down what's really going on, and we kind of here's our topic that we should be speaking about until you're more comfortable talking about other things. Because, again, I'm a non-confrontational guy. I might see that here's this really big glaring elephant standing in the room, but the person that I'm working with isn't ready to talk about the elephant in the room. Okay, well, let's talk about the stuffed animals. It's on the couch or something. Because if you bring this massively front and center, in the blink of an eye, it scare the hell out of people. They don't want to talk about it. They look like a clam. They close up and away they go, and they're no better off in life. So when I find what it is that we're going to be talking about, slowly getting around to saying, here's what happens, and then reminding them, okay, even if this is something that you are claiming is your fault, other people had a hand in making this happen or getting to this reality. So is it all your fault? No, it's not. Even if it is your fault, you made choices and decisions that you would never make those same choices and decisions again. So let's look. We made some poor choices. Okay, fine. Now let's rectify it. Let's look at the new big picture. What do you want?
Exactly.
And I think all of us have hit that point when we say, what do you want? And we really mean it. People sit there and go, I don't know. Well, let's find out what you do want.
Yep.
Well, I don't know how to do that. Well, then tell me how many things you don't want. And once you start walking through this process of telling people what they don't want and they telling you, it dawns on them, oh my God, this is what I want. There you go. Let's work with that. And let's see where this is all going to go. So all of us have a different way of metaphysics about us. And it's vastly apparent, all of us are attacking the same issues in life from a very different standpoint. But we're all trying to achieve the same thing, elevating who we are energetically, trying to get us all moving in a much better direction. Because I've seen people, I've worked with people even recently to get their lives back on track the way that they want. And it becomes a very happy thing. And I laughed because it's one of the first things that I notice about Lisa when she does some of her live shows. She's laughing even though there may be news or something going on that is not present.
You were on yesterday.
And she's laughing. It's like most people would be sitting there slamming the phone, bad news, whack. See, but that's the whole point right there. It's a choice to laugh and be happy about it, or to see that this is a temporary thing. Exactly. Now I'm going to go all the way back full circle because, believe it or not, we don't have a whole lot of time left. Tammy, if you were to take a couple of minutes, what would you tell people that you really want them to know before we finish the show this evening?
If you knew how powerful your soul is, after 15,000 or maybe more lifetimes, you would not have those self-worth doubts. If you could remember everything that you already know, that I can see in this chart, that are your gifts and talents, you would be blown away, and you would not waste any time having the doubts. But I could kind of see how you would wobble. Okay, you're out of alignment a little bit. It's very easy to get back into alignment. All you have to do is want to and believe. If you believe it, it's going to happen, and you can create it.
And that's a big thing, is getting people balanced. And people say, how can I be balanced if I'm broke? Hold nothing in one hand and hold nothing in the other and go forward. Now you're balanced. If you're angry, be angry, get it out of your system, and then be happy. It's so many ways to take a look at it and deal with it. Malcolm, in the last couple of minutes, what would you tell people that you would want them to know about this evening and the topic of this evening?
Believe in yourself. Spend some time getting to know your higher self. Meditation, prayer, usually some form of spiritual practice. But the more that you connect with your higher self, the easier your path is. Things become a lot clearer. You understand yourself a lot more, and there's a whole lot less suffering generated when you're doing things when you're in balance, when you're in alignment with your soul's purpose, when you're going with the flow.
That's a key to me too. Is a joy and a happiness. How would you take the time to tell somebody how to recognize what that happy, joyful flow is compared to where they have been? I know I'm hitting you with questions way out of the blue. I
Yes,
apologize.
it's true. You gotta let go of the struggle. That's the number. We get so struggled in our thoughts, and we get so confused in our beliefs. The more that you can let go of that struggle, the more light comes through you, and that light is synonymous with joy. And it allows us to find our own sense of inner peace and completeness and wholeness. So if we can work our way back to that, life is absolutely amazing. It's magical every day.
I agree with that 110%. Lisa, I'm going to ask you, tonight must be the way out there kind of questions. You are by far one of the happiest, I don't want to say carefree, but you're just a bubbly lady sitting there and laughing, even though I know some of the backstory of things that are going on for you. You're happy. How would you relate people to, again, like Malcolm said, how would you get people to begin to attain that? And then what would be something you want people to know before we finish our show?
Oh, I think a lot of it is I learned to breathe. I was very stressed. I was a very depressed person when I first started this. You wouldn't know it. I was coming down off of some, I had been a big, business owner, and we had a huge salon and day spa, and all of a sudden it was gone. And so I was in depression, and I learned to breathe. I learned to slow down and take a minute, calm my brain, and start to feel the things around me that were more important than the fear and anxiety that was going on in life. And I think a lot of people don't do that. We zoom through life instead of enjoying life and everything that goes with it. So I really think that would be the very first step. Slow down, breathe, close your eyes, meditate, clear your mind, and breathe from the chest, that heart chakra. Breathe from the heart chakra, because there's just so much, it's such a connection. And what would I tell everybody? Everybody's a singularity. There's nobody on the face of the planet like one individual. We're all different. We're all gifted. We're all guided. We all have gifts, and we're all healers. And when people can settle into that seat of their soul and feel comfortable there, that's when their aha moments really start to populate the brain, and they become. They become. I guess that's the best way to put it.
I appreciate that, because it's true. If I could tell people one small thing, everything that you experienced today, if today was a bad day, it will never look exactly the same again in your life. Everything will change. And just as you've heard people this evening, it's taking the time to stop and say, hey, check this out. I can look at it in a different way. Johnny Depp played a character, Jack Sparrow. I love that character in Pirates of the Caribbean. He said, the problem isn't the problem. The problem is how you look at the problem. Or something that it's a very close So if you have an enormous problem that's going on, break it down into some component parts. If it's a problem at work, don't say work is a problem, because it's actually not. It's probably boiled down to one or two people that you have an issue with. And more than likely, those two people, the issue is not the same. And one issue is going to take precedence. So if you knock out this huge thing with one person, your job automatically becomes better. And then you can take care of the other problem person that is there. Or you can learn how to navigate around them or anything. But we need to boil down and say, what's the real issue? You know? Lack of finance. Okay, probably not true of a real lack of finance. Most of the time, our spending habits are atrocious. And we just got to pay attention to what we're doing. But in all of it, I love what Lisa said, just slow down and breathe. And everybody, if you've been listening this evening, I hope that it has been a help to be able to turn around and say, hey, there are different ways that we can tackle everything that we do. I do appreciate everybody joining in from both the YouTube chat room, watching us live on YouTube, as well as the people that are watching us live on Facebook. And again, probably somewhere in the next couple of weeks, we'll add Periscope, but that's not quite there yet. All three of you, this has been an awesome evening. I really appreciate it. Like I said, our time flies. It goes by so quickly. Just like that, an hour is gone. Next week on Terra Turas, we're going to have another topic. I've got a rough idea, but I want to see where this is going to go. But if you would, next week, join us again at 9 p.m. Eastern on Terra Turas at our show here that is live on Facebook, or you can join the show live on YouTube. You can also go and look at terraturas.com. All of us have our own bio on terraturas.com, and there's also a way that you can get together, find out what the schedules are. If you need a reading from anybody that is on the show, you'll be able to schedule that with them. The last thing is the podcast. We are on 10 of the major podcast areas that are on the web, so if you can't catch us live, you can always catch a replay on the podcast, and that's not only now for the Terra Turas show. Last week was our first The After Show. There is currently, believe it or not, there is currently a small questionnaire on the Terra Turas page on Facebook. Would you rather see one large YouTube video or two videos on Facebook? The only reason I have to split it into two, Facebook says we're only allowed to have this big instead of an hour, so I have to cut it in half. At any rate, I'm going to be done babbling. Thank you, everybody, for joining. It's been an awesome hour. We'll see you again next week on Terra Turas. Until then, I hope everybody has a great weekend.
Thank you very much.